Hey everyone, welcome back to my tier list of Sprout. Right now, this is part 2. We finished part 1 and now we're about to be focusing on it. So, next up we've got here is Make Way for Naughty, which was awful. Because like the DreamWorks version, it's really the same awful stuff as this. Next up we've got here is The Mighty Jungle, which was awful as well, because those singing puppet animals are like the way that they talk in sort of stuff. Because these puppet animals, they talk really familiar because they like to speak in different animal cultures. Like, what the heck? I have no clue what those animals do speak in front of. Like, no kidding, man. That's crazy. So, yeah, they speak English, but for some reasons, they don't speak Spanish at all. Next up we've got here are the Clangers. The Clangers, I have not seen anything before. Because, like on the other tier lists, they're like really not that bad at all. Dennis Genisher, Durgo World, Dive Ollie Dive, those shows, including the dog chef dude right there, is really bad as well. It looks like Fetch with Rough Men, but a little bit different than the aspects. So those shows are not that bad. Next up, we've got a Fraggle Rock spinoff, The Doozers. Now, here's a little hint on Google once I'm searching up Fraggle Rock Doozers. Now, the Doozers, I gotta say, those ones were originated from the 90s or early 2000s. But for the animated series is what I'm talking about is the animation. The animation itself. Like, we're not talking about this type of series of Fraggle Rock, but I'm talking about these CGI animated series. But, of course, they are actually a little bit different. From animated Hanna-Barbera riff-offs, puppetry, and CGI animated, the Doozers, they usually do work as much. So I might have to put as different. So, in case it makes sense a little more. So, yeah. Dot. This show's bad. Percy the Park Keeper. Ugly. Because she's the park keeper to make everything work in the environmental living. Earth to Luna. Ugly. Brambly Hedge. Also ugly. Just in Time. I haven't seen it because I might have saw the theme song once, but I've never seen the whole episode. Next up is Dragon Tales, which it was casual, I think. So that's the same creators of who does Sesame Street and Pinky Diggy Doo, but not Cartoon Pizza, but Sesame Workshop there is. Well, like I said in the previous tier list on PBS Kids, I think it's... Let me just do the whole speech of a throwback here and just see what's about. It's Dragon Tales, and it's actually like the same creator who makes Pinky Diggy Doo and Sesame Street. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. So, yeah. It's definitely bad. Because, Ord was actually the one who makes Dragon Corn, and Zack and Wheezy were like, Monsters University characters, which was not that fun to do. Two heads are better than one, to be honest. So, yeah. A Terry with the Y and Terry with the I, Zack and Wheezy are just really the references. So, I changed my mind. I'm putting this to bad. You're right. In the PBS Kids tier list, it's really the same ripoffs to Monsters University, which was definitely a little bit thing there. So, next up, we've got 3 of the top 10 out of 10 shows. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, The Wiggles, and Sesame Street as well, because they're like 10 out of 10 best-selling series. As well as Play With Me Sesame, because I have to leave it there. So, Play With Me Sesame is like a spin-off or a segment to it's the same creators who made Sesame Street and so much more, because they involve segments like Dancing Around with Grover or Simon Says with Ernie and stuff like that. So it's a little bit in particular these days. And like I said in the later PBS Kids tier list series, we might have to pull it forward for a little bit, because I thought Sesame Street might have been a little bit in the tier list, so let's see.
Sesame Street. Give me one of those. Well, for Thomas and Friends, for example, George Carlin or Alec Baldwin or Ringo Starr, who plays the narrator. But in the worst scenes, Gordon might say in my impression voice, "Get out of my way!" That's what he says in the later series, like, The Journey of Thomas the Tank Engine is where I made. And for Sesame Street, well, speaking of which, one of the characters seems a little bit different or new in the later seasons. But point out, it has the same or different segments from the later series. Let me give you a point out. Celebrities like Jack Black and some of the other characters from previous shows might have been on the air, like a lot of times ever since Jim Henson or Sesame Workshop will never approve. Not so fast. You can't tell Sesame Workshop what to do.
Well, Count needs to block for this. We did review Play With Me Sesame Thomas and Sesame Street. Now we're moving, so we haven't thought about the mascots for the Wiggles and Yo Gabba Gabba, so why don't we just do that again for those who's actually getting a close-up look. Because some folks, like from the later series, might have been a little bit different than that forever. It's like life comes different and forever because of the band artists that they could do, like from children's entertainment and band people. They just like to do some weird stuff. I mean, what the heck is wrong? Take a look at these mascots. They're literally different. I can't tell by their face expressions what to think. Now, here's a little sneak peek of some of the impressions. Bruno, what do you think you're here? Henry? Bruno, would you like to play? No, thank you. You sounded like Lofty, but I'm a Cyclops, not a crane. Oh, well, just giving you a heads up. Yup. Enough of that, Henry. So, why don't we just move on to one of the good series later on. So, without further ado, let's just continue on with the tier list. Next up we've got here is Driver Dom Storytime. Haven't seen that before, because it's about a lion who tells everyone stories and make up its moves. Next up we've got 3 worst Jim Henson shows. First, we got The Hoops, for example, which was definitely ugly. Sid the Science Kid, which is known as bad, because I've heard one of the series, it's a ripoff of Bill Nye the Science Guy, and Pajanimals. And Pajanimals was actually a ripoff to the Wobulous World of Dr. Seuss, which was actually way better. And it's like a night show, not any other show that involves silly things. Next up, we've got Lazy Town, which means it's definitely different. Because of the stations like Nick Jr. or BBC, it seems a little bit different because I get it. Again, it's a ripoff of Bunnytown and Sesame Street, but in particular these days. Like, it involves singing, dancing, and fun, and the main antagonist, which was not Dr. Doofenshmirtz, but it's actually going to be... What's the antagonist? The antagonist's name is Robbie Rotten. Robbie Rotten was actually Dr. Doofenshmirtz. So, yeah, I mean, it's really not in particular these days. And the ugliest Jim Henson show might be Francis. And most importantly, that could be it. Next up, we've got here is some weird animal shows that was on the haven't seen list. Zoo, Pingu, and some other ones. Sarah and Duck, which means we haven't saw that one yet. Or that was Sarah and the Duck, but I don't know what this show is that from anyways. But that was Sarah and Duck. Poppy Cat, which I have Poppy Kitty, which Poppy Cat seems like an orange cat who actually speaks some type of way, which means it's really what I have found in the haven't seen list. Kipper the dog, which was definitely haven't seen because Kipper the dog loves playing pretend and stuff like that. Different shows in particular were The Boy with Spiders, Fifi and the Flower Tots, Fireman Sam, Fugel's Black Ball with Shoes, Franny's Feet, George Shrinks, Jakers The Adventures of Piggly Wings, James the Cat, and most importantly, JJ the Jet Plane. Well, we'll get that to casual, because I did similar to those on the later tier list or something else. Next up we have here is Rory the Racing Car. Well, JJ the Jet Plane is about like how those... Well, it started in the late 90s from the model series, but the CGI series came out in the 2000s, and they made DVDs and made some PBS Kids runnings from early 2000s, which seems crazy to be honest. Next up we have got here is Kapow, which I haven't seen yet. Kratz Creatures, and speaking of which, Zaboomafoo. James the Cat will have to put on different there. Kratz Creatures and Zaboomafoo. Like I said for Zaboomafoo, it's like before Wild Kratts, for example. Like, when Zaboomafoo says, "Who can it be?" the animal will have to start thinking. And let me just check about the claymations of Zaboomafoo, because it could be crazy to tell if claymations will never be real. Like, let's say, for example, that Google loves to eat googleberries. Narchi loves to play pretend. Let's not go crazy with Narchi right now. Let's just move on. Next up, we have got another Sesame Street ripoff, Pawapa. Pawapa was actually awful because it involves like so many different types of creatures who lives in Pawapa Island, and they like to go on adventures in a horrible island of discoveries will never be changed. Like, forget about it. Let's just move on. Nina's World, we haven't seen that before. Monkey See, Monkey Do. Doodle and Doodle. And that little spokes goose right there. Mama Mirabelle's Whole Movies. Rough Rough Tweet and Dave. Stella and Sam. Or Bella and Sam, more like that. Pick Me. which I've never seen that before. And we've got another Sesame Workshop show, Sagwa the Chinese Siamese Cat, which I said it's like Dragon Tales, but a little bit different than a series, but it's a little bit different. Then Super Y, which means it's definitely casual. Because it's a little different than Little Einsteins or Wonder Pets, for example, like I said in the later PBS Kids tier list. School of Wars, Five Little Monsters, Sing It Lori, Space Racers, Super Wings, Terrific Trucks, The Chica Show, which means it's a puppet show that already been spoken, or an animated type of series. Topsy and Tim, Tree Fu Tom, The Ollie and Moon Show, and most importantly, the Beavis and Butthead ripoff. So those are the... Note, Ollie and Moon Show is like anything but Amazing World of Gumball ripoffs. Tree Fu Tom is a ripoff of Mike the Knight, but a little bit different than that because he gets grounded with Mike the Knight. Topsy and Tim were just like brothers and sisters of Daniel Cook, but a little bit different than that. And the Beavis and Butthead ripoff, I don't know what they do, but they like to play pretend. So, yeah. Those are the PBS Kids Sprout tier list, or more like the Sprout Channel tier list. So, that's what we got so far. But if you'd like to see more, hit the subscribe button and see how much videos I should be taking. So, this is Colin Deckman saying, sign you out, and hopefully you'll have to catch me again real soon. This is Colin Deckman saying, signing you out.